Chileans go to vote on the second and final date of the country's Constitution Convention election. A severe cyclone in India has killed at least 4 people.
The criminal acts of Israel
And Iran
should be
accuses
recognized
Israel of
as
genocide and crimes
and
against humanity against Palestinians.
by both domestic legislation in our own country.
Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Chileans have come out to vote on the second and final date of the country's Constitution Convention election. The poll will see 155 members elected to rewrite the Chile's dictatorship constitution, as well as the election of mayors, councillors, and other officials. So some 14 million people are eligible to vote this weekend in what many consider to be Chile's most important election since its return to democracy 31 years ago. According to the country's electoral service, more than 3 million people, or approximately 20.4% of the electorate, cast their ballot Saturday. However, this historic election in Chile was the result of deadly protests in 2019 that were triggered by deep social inequality. Our correspondent Paola Dragnit explains how Chile has gotten to this point.
This is how the first curfew in Chile occurred, in the middle of the social unrest. This is footage recorded by TeleSUR on October 22, 2009, when they tried to arrest our team as well as these terrified people just passing by, when Pinochet's dictatorship would have been thrown into the sea.
I am Chinese. It hurts. The handcuffs are too tight.
That was the kind of terror that returned to the streets. President Piñera had declared war on his people.
Estamos en guerra.
We are at war against a powerful enemy, relentless, which does not respect anything or anyone.
5 days had passed since the students shook the country by jumping the subway fare post. After the bus fare increase, the Chilean people took to the streets. It was not 30 pesos, but 30 years of abuses, they said, without distinction of social class.
It is not enough to lower the prices of the bus fare. Not anymore.
We will open the big avenues.
The government responded with bullets. Thousands were arrested and were victims of human rights violations. Jorge Mora and Neko died, ran over by Chilean police force known as Carabineros. Mauricio Fredes drowned with the water from the water cannons. Camila, like thousands of others, received shotgun blasts. Gustavo and Fabiola lost both eyes due to the Carabineros violence.
Since they shot me, the state has done nothing. They have never communicated with us. No one. No one.
On October 25, 2019, the country exploded. Exactly a year later, the people were at the polls voting on whether to change the constitution. That was the solution offered to the people of Chile, through a peace agreement that was signed behind closed doors after the strike on November 12, 2019, and ended with the political class meeting this way.
And I hope that citizens will join and support this process as they have done through mobilization.
All parties were present, except the communists and progressive, who reaffirmed they will not be deceived.
With the attitude of the right wing now, asking that what is not approved with 2/3 should replace the current constitution, that I hope that they do not make an agreement on that.
Almost 2 years later, candidates for mayors, city councilors, and constituent convention members are equally running for office.
The laws imposed by the constitutional reforms have made possible this constituent process to be made in a path full of traps, pitfalls, trickery, made it very difficult to elect constituent delegates who are not sponsored by the political parties, who have controlled the process until now.
As it happened in the 1990s, when dictator Augusto Pinochet ended up as a member of Congress and the young people who fought against him were imprisoned like Pedro Rosas.
The mid-November agreement is an agreement that produced a breakdown in the social movement. This caused a profound demobilization, and more serious than that, it caused the eyes to fall on those young people of the front line, on those young people who in the communes, in the territories, in the towns, continue to express themselves in the streets.
The body that will draft this new constitution will not be a popular assembly. It will be subject to the law 21,200 and will be written over the loss of 30 people that died, close to 500 victims of eye trauma, and hundreds of political prisoners that are not contemplated in the new peace agreement that is being prepared between the Congress and La Moneda Palace. Now under the idea of common minimus to calm the hunger and unrest left by the pandemic in the midst of the electoral process.
No lo he dicho yo, lo han dicho.
I have not said it. No, many opposition leaders have said it. Senator Insulza has said it. Some members of the Senate said it. What we are looking for are common minutes related to the pandemic. In that sense, we believe that this conversation should be limited to that, but not because we do not want to talk about human rights.
The democratic game shall continue.
Italo Retamar y Paola Drachnik, TeleSUR, Chile.
And to learn what is at stake in Chile's election, we are now joined live by journalist Marcelo Pazzi, based in La Paz, Bolivia. Thank you, Marcelo, for joining us. More than 1,300 candidates are competing to be among the 155 members of the Constitution Convention. Its mission will be to rewrite the country's dictatorship-area constitution. Who are these candidates and which of them have the best chance to make it into the convention?
Okay, this is a very important moment in the history of Chile. It's currently managed as a private company where there is a lot of money, and it have to change. And about the people who are participating, the right has the possibility of winning only 30% of the representation, while the left winning can win with 70%. However, what the right did is to articulate in a single front, while the left is going divided into a different groups, such as the concentration, the humanist, the Communist Party, etc., etc. It's very different about Bolivia, where the left wing was being united around the mass movimiento al socialismo, and the right was really divided. And in Bolivia, the left wing around 55% in the last elections.
And Marcelo, what are people's expectations regarding the new constitution, and what candidates from left-wing and right-wing parties won?
It's a very important moment in the history of Chile, because they have to change. Chile is like a private company where profits only go privileged group, while the vast majority are left and very little. Chile is not a private company. Chile is from the people, and it has to change. It's very important in this moment because the new constitution have to regulate the resources such as the water, minerals, and the sea. Currently, they complain that the water is serving only for the production, only for the export of products, and the benefits don't go directly to the people. They go to the transnationals. The same situation is with the minerals, with an other resource like the sea. Chileans have to get the benefits of their resource. It's a very important moment because Chile it's a private company, and in this moment has to be a nation. And like Bolivia, we have the control of our resource, and it's very good for us.
And how this new constitution will be implemented, and what else has been done to address the protest movement's demands?
Well, it's a historic moment in Chile, but the problem in this moment is the loud participation of the people, and it's very dangerous because if people don't participate in this election, the right wing will say, okay, what's the problem? The people is in the streets, in the manifestation, and now no, there is no people voting. There is no people participate, and I think it's a very dangerous. I hope that this election, the people, the Chilean people, has to participate, all the people, but if a little people participate in this election, the right wing can say this new constitution it's no important because only little people has participated in this election.
We want to thank you, Marcelo, for joining us, and we hope to have you again in the show next time. That was Marcelo Pazzi, a journalist based in Bolivia. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. In Colombia, indigenous protesters have blocked the Pan American Highway, demonstrating against President Iván Duque and his government. Indigenous protesters have heavily rejected the government's land policies and the assault of women during protests. The road blockades in the Cauca department have caused fuel and food shortages in the south of the country as anti-government protests have entered the third week. Clashes between police and protesters have resulted in at least 42 deaths and more than 1,500 injuries. And thousands of Colombians have marched through central Madrid in support of anti-government protests back home, where over 40 people have been killed in clashes with police. The protesters in Madrid, many wearing the national colors or draped in the Colombian flag, marched up a main road chanting democracy, peace and justice, while waving SOS banners. The protests in Colombia were triggered late April by a tax reform bill since withdrawn and the finance minister behind it resigned earlier in May, but demonstrations have continued, fueled by anger at anti-government in a country battling ongoing violence and economic hardship made worse by the coronavirus pandemic.
We are asking the government of Pedro Sanchez to please activate the human rights clause in the FTA between Colombia and the European Union, because at the moment, the human rights of Colombians are being violated. There have been more than 50 murders by state forces, and the Spanish government has done absolutely nothing to prevent Colombia from being withdrawn as a NATO partner. For example, just as it proposed Colombia's entry into NATO.
The head of Ethiopia's election board has said it will be impossible to hold parliamentary elections as planned on June 5th due to logistical issues such as training electoral staff, printing and distributing ballot papers. However, she did not give any date. The elections had already been delayed from late August due to the coronavirus epidemic, and problems had only mounted since, with a conflict in the North Tigray region and brutal ethnic violence in several areas.
According to the board assessment, we have understood that the election needs extra time, at least 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We haven't decided yet on the final date. However, we have understood that it would be impossible to hold the planned June 5th election and complete the voting process and counting on the scheduled date.
In India, a severe cyclone has killed at least 4 people and badly damaged 73 villages. Cyclone tauktae, the season's first major storm, with winds of up to 140 kilometers per hour, is expected to make landfall on Tuesday on Gujarat state in southern India. Nearly 2,500 government rescue workers have been deployed in 6 states. They are equipped with wireless radios, satellite phones, cutters, and tools needed for post-cyclone operations. The region is not strange to the devastating cyclones, but changing climate patterns have caused them to become more intense rather than more frequent.
Sea condition at present is phenomenal. That means the wave height over East Central Arabian Sea is about 14 meters, and therefore it has the potential to cause the tidal waves. And I just want to mention that in this way, it can have a multiple impact or a multi-hazard impact in terms of heavy rainfall, winds, and storm surge leading to coastal inundations.
More stories coming up after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. An Israeli airstrike in Gaza overnight killed more than 2,000 people, the single deadliest attack of the current hostilities. On Sunday morning, rescue workers combed through the rubble of 3 buildings destroyed in the Israeli airstrike as the hostilities between Israelis and Palestinians escalated to levels not seen since 2014 war. With the conflict stretching into its 7th straight day, the United States stepped up its diplomatic engagement, and the United Nations Security Council met to discuss the conflict in public for the first time. Secretary General Antonio Guterres was the first of nearly 2,000 speakers on the agenda of the meeting, led by the delegation from China.
I'm appalled by the increasingly large number of Palestinian civilian casualties, including many women and children, from Israeli strikes in Gaza. And I also deplore Israeli fatalities from rockets launched from Gaza. I am also deeply concerned by violent clashes between Israeli security forces and Palestinians across the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, where some Palestinian families are under threat of eviction. In Israel, violence by vigilante-style groups and mobs have added to a further horrendous dimension to an already deteriorating crisis. Leaders on all sides have a responsibility to curb inflammatory rhetoric and calm the rising tensions.
The international community has a crucial role to play. It must take action now to enable the parties to step back from the brink. I welcome the statements from members of the Security Council, the Arab League, and others aimed at finding a diplomatic solution to the immediate crisis. I also appreciate the efforts of leaders across the international community over the past days, urging all parties to exercise restraints, de-escalate tension, and prevent further civilian casualties. Mr. President, we are once again witnessing the tragic results of the failure to address the core issues that have driven the conflict for decades. Palestinian and Israeli civilians continue to endure the suffering that accompanies repeated cycles of violence and conflict. These cycles of violence will only stop with a political resolution to the conflict, including addressing the status of Jerusalem and other final status issues, with an end to the occupation and the realization of a two-state solution on the basis of the 1967 lines, UN resolutions, international law, and mutual agreements with Israel as capital of both Israel and Palestine.
Israeli airstrikes on Gaza City destroyed 3 buildings and killed at least 33 people on Sunday, making it the deadliest single attack since heavy fighting broke out between Israel and the territory's militant Hamas rulers nearly a week ago. The Gaza Health Ministry said 12 women and 8 children were among those killed. with another 50 people wounded in the attack. In overall, at least 188 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, including at least 47 children and 29 women, with more than 1,200 wounded. 8 Israelis have been killed, including a 5-year-old boy and a soldier.
My brother's children have all been martyred alongside their mother. 4 children and their mother, 2 girls and 2 boys. They are children aged 2, 6, 10, and 11 years old, and they're all gone. It's a heinous war. We were sitting at home and nothing was going on. Suddenly, everything flipped over after midnight, at almost 12:15. The strike hit Al-Wada Street. We don't know how we fled to the street. I took my wife and children and fled. I was standing in the middle of the apartment. Half our building collapsed, since all the buildings surrounding the building which was hit were damaged. I went to look and saw that the building in which my brother lives had completely collapsed. We went down and we did not expect it to be hit with 40 strikes. It was not normal. 40 strikes in 3 minutes.
An Israeli airstrike has destroyed a tower block that houses media outlets, including the Associated Press and Al Jazeera. No casualties have been reported from the airstrike so far. The owner of the building said the Israeli army warned him about the planned strike, and people were evacuated before the bombing of the building. The Israeli army claimed that the building contained military assets belonging to Hamas.
It's probably about the media's deep impact. The army of the Israeli occupation may have been annoyed by the role that is played by the media networks. But in the end, these networks are fulfilling their informative duty without any manipulation, falsification, or intimidation. The images do not lie, falsify, or forge. They convey the reality of the situation, as it is in the Gaza Strip. There are airstrikes, and there are demolition of hundreds of houses. And today, it was the turn of this building and its media offices and apartments. I think we are doing our professional duty. We do not necessarily have to transmit messages, but our continuity to work and keep up with events and developments, as well as our continuity to hold our journalistic message and move forward what it is considered as a response to all sides that wanted to maybe silence the voices and turn off the cameras.
Iran has accused Israel of genocide and crimes against humanity against Palestinians during a virtual meeting with the 57-nation organization by Islamic Cooperation. The emergency meeting is the first major move among Middle East nations, still grappling with how to address the conflict.
Acts of Israel should be recognized as genocide and crimes against humanity by both domestic legislation in our own countries and OIC resolutions. Make no mistake, Israel only understands the language of resistance, and the people of Palestine are fully entitled to their right to defend themselves and to defy the bullying of this racist regime. The massacre of Palestinian children today follows the purported normalization. This criminal and genocidal regime has once again proven that friendly gestures only aggravate its atrocities.
And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.